Everything should be all right now. Everything should be all good. Okay. Shall I? No, that's okay. Good. All right. We should be okay now. Had a mad scramble. Hello to everyone. Everyone's coming in. Yeah, I had a mad scramble. I was stuck. Well, there was like some traffic. Yeah, so I had a bit of a scramble. But yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's enjoying themselves. Hello everyone, if you're just coming in, nice to see you all. Yeah, Reggie should be with us soon. Hope everyone's good. Bearing in mind the rules of today, here to learn some stuff. Here to learn some history about where we come from, where it all started. What's going on? I'm good. How are you? Yeah, so here to learn about some history. Hello. And yeah, it's going to be lots of fun. For those of you, I don't know if there are people in here who don't know who Reggie is, but you're about to find out. Yeah, today we're doing skating history. We're doing skating history. Yeah, gonna learn stuff. I'm very interested. When Reggie jumps in here, I'll explain why I wanted to do this project. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And yes, if you can't stay for the whole live, bear in mind I will be saving this and I will post it up. So yeah, it should be good. Where's my beard? Where's my mustache doing that? Yeah, how's everyone's day? How's everyone doing? Make your way in, get yourself nice and comfortable. Take your shoes off at the door, please. We don't do that shoe business inside here. Good. How's everyone doing? How's that? Can everyone hear me, by the way? Can everyone hear me? I need to know that. Yes? No? Can you all hear me? Good. And this will be posted. This will be posted on... I don't think I'll post it here. I'll post it on YouTube. But yeah, I'm going to post this after. Good? Everyone can... Oh. Why? Okay. I don't know why the audio is weird. Maybe I should say a bit closer. And move all this stuff. Alright. Could just be me. No, I don't think it's you. Yeah? Alright if I sit a bit closer? You can see all my... Nadia. Why do we do this to each other, man? Kai, just be the bigger man. Come on, Kai. I hope everyone's okay. How was your day today? How was your day? Everyone good? Yeah, good day? Everyone feeling good, looking good, smelling good? Good. Yeah, so we're just waiting for Reggie. I think he's just wrapping up his live. But yeah, yeah, once he gets in here, once we get the opportunity to talk, then I will inform you all of why I want to do this. And any questions, use the question. I don't know, it's here for me, but use the question box thing, because obviously we're going to be engaged in the conversation, so I won't be able to see every message. But yeah, in a minute, this won't matter because other people will join and no one will hear this information. Good. Good. Is the title okay? Yep, title's good. Good. Hello, everyone. Yeah. Yeah, it does kind of sparkle. Yeah. Just trying to keep the Afro game. I'm trying to stay ahead of the Afro game. So I see a lot of Afros that be looking like this. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to keep that roundness. Trying to keep the kind of mushroom kind of look, you know? It's so glow. Yeah, that's it. It's so glow. What's going on, Reggie? Feel free to jump in when you're ready. You know, they'll start cussing each other in the live, man. Good. Let me see if I can get you in here, bro. Invite to join. Yeah, okay, cool. I just sent you an invite, Reggie. Hopefully you got it. Yeah, I mean, I guess the flat top works. Could do that. Yeah, I'm just trying to keep the Afro levels. Hear me? What's going on, Reggie? How you doing, man?
What's going on?
How you doing? How's things, man?
It's Cam, right? Think I'm
Yeah,
in here messing around. What's up, my brother?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Yo, shout out to your afro, man.
I keep saying, like, I'm trying to hold it down because people
You
forgot
doing
to
that?
hold it down, man. It's tough.
you,
It's tough being up here, you know.
hey, look, I dig it, bro. Like it's the identity. It's natural. It's all you. Feel me?
That's
It's
it.
it's natural. It's all you. That's what I dig the most. You know what I mean? Like as far as it goes.
Yeah,
Um, I think that's really really dope.
I
So
appreciate it,
what's
man.
going on in London, man?
It's good. It's good. I think there's a nice It feels good. I think especially after Roll On, like it's a lot more. I mean, I don't think it was never positive, but it's really positive. Like I feel like everyone's really putting work in now. That's just from
Okay,
what I
okay, that's good. That's how it should be. You know, you feel like people are kind of putting in work from like which capacity? You think like more like from a community capacity, like where it is that they're doing more.
Yeah, I think there's that. I see a lot of like new faces or faces that have mainly stuck to other spots in London coming out and being about.
Ah, nice, nice. That's good. That's how it's supposed to be. You know what I'm saying?
The
It's
level
better
should,
that way.
yeah, I agree. I agree. It's better when we're all together. It really
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
yeah,
So the reason I wanted to do this live, Reggie,
yeah,
is because me and you, we had a series of conversations when you were here.
yeah.
And I just want to say that you really inspired me. Like a lot of the conversations that we had, I was really listening to the things that you said, and you really inspired me to embark on this journey of figuring out where we come from, what our history is.
Right,
The thing that really resonated with me is that you were talking about that skating history is Black history.
hmm
How the two things are so intertwined, and that's
right,
why it's important for you to skate hard when you skate.
right.
Yeah, and it really resonated with me. I really felt that message.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I
Wow.
wanted to I just kind of wanted to go back, see if you can like help us with just kind of discovering a bit of an identity, especially here in the UK.
Yeah,
I think we're just really trying to find that right now.
right. I think that one of the biggest things that it is that people have to understand and like know, like it's never just roller skating. Like people just say like, oh well, you just roller skate, or it's like, well, you take it too seriously, or it's more so kind of one of those spaces where you're a skater and it's what you do, and it's just like it's just roller skating, it's just roller skating, and they always kind of consider it to be like a almost in a minimalistic kind of fashion where it's like it's smaller, like you say it like as if it's nothing, like so we're supposed to treat it like it's nothing. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, it's just skating. It's like, oh, ain't nobody getting paid off of this. So y'all are taking it too serious. But here's where the disconnect comes in. The disconnect comes in is because just because it's not serious to you doesn't mean that it's not serious to someone else. And they can't take it seriously if they don't know why we should be taking it seriously.
Right.
So sometimes there's that disconnect in conversation. Like sometimes I've heard people talk about roller skating as if it's just like a kid's pastime. Like yeah, I used to skate when I was a kid. Well, I still skate as an adult. What the hell does that mean? You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like, what does that mean? Like just because you skated when you were a kid, I skated when I was a kid too. The only difference is I didn't stop. You did. You felt like you outgrew skating when in actuality, skating outgrew you. That's why it removed you. You
Yeah.
see, it removed you from it because you no longer could evolve with skating. So it basically shifted you to the left. You know what I mean? And everybody else, we started to grow with the culture because there was something that we could find there. The biggest thing about it is the reason why black roller skating, and I'd like to point out, I'm talking two spaces. There's roller skating history as a whole, which is just roller skating. I'm talking the Dutch, the French, and Boston, and the invention of the quad skate in the US. I'm talking, there's all this connection, right? There's roller skating. And then there is black roller skating. Now, where we are the world and unify everything and keep it together, we maintain black roller skating because it's part of our cultural identity.
Right.
And if it's a part of our cultural identity, we don't have to mix it in with anything. We can separate it and still have our own respect and still have our own spaces, but not separate ourselves from allowing other people to be educated by it. That's a difference. Because, see, for us as Black people, we were kept out of everything. Everything we had to fight to get in or fight to have. There was nothing that existed for us that said, here you go, take this. Here you go, you've earned this. Here you go, no problem. Every single inch that it is that we have, culturally or otherwise, we had to fight tooth and nail to then be able to get. Mm-hmm. So for us, it all matters and it's all important. So for others, when we celebrate Black history or we celebrate Blackness, that doesn't mean that we don't celebrate other aspects of culture. We just celebrate our own first, as you should with whatever it is, racial or cultural demographic that it is you do. If you're Asian, celebrate Asian culture first. If you're from Pakistan, if you're from Saudi Arabia, wherever you're from, celebrate your culture first, because it's the cultural heritage for which that you're birthed into, what you're a part of, your genetics. This is where it begins. So we do the same thing culturally. But the difference between us and a lot of people is in Black roller skating culture, we haven't closed the doors to anyone. We allowed anyone who wanted to come in. And all of those doors were all shut to us. We were kicked out, beaten out, fire hosed out, dog bitten out. But when it came down to Black roller skating culture and the music and the thrives and the events, we didn't make it to where it's a Black only event. We didn't make it to where this style that it is that's Black roller skating was invented for Blacks and you could never learn it, right? We never did that. We welcomed everybody because we didn't want anybody to be subjected to the same treatment that we were subjected to for a lifetime, right? So we try to treat people like how we wanted to be treated in the beginning. So for us, it's a completely different type of space. When you look at something that is Black roller skating, like we always say, people love Black culture, but they don't love Black people. And that's a big difference in the two. Like Black culture as everything that it is that we touch that has been between African culture and the culture, the contributions of African people, I mean, are unmatched, right? So the biggest thing about it is, in understanding it now, here in the present day, you have a great appreciation for Black culture, but you don't have a great appreciation for the Black people that invented it. Mm-hmm. And for the African people that it is that invented it. And this is where we start to change the narrative with the things that we can change it with. In each different cultural space that it is that happens, there's an alpha, there's a beginning for how it is that we get here, right? And as we identify some of these things about like taking it serious and getting understanding why this is such a big deal, let's identify a couple of different factors that it is that people either already know or you're about to learn right now. Before such time as we get here, we are all in Africa, okay? And then slavery happens, and then what? We then hit the shores and get distributed all throughout the world in many different ways and capacities. Now, we're forced to come in and to participate in what is the quote-unquote America, right? We're forced to come in. So that means that our very first inception into anything American, into anything that it is that becomes cultural, that's non-African, becomes by force, right? So that means that somebody else imposing their will on us to do what they want us to do, as opposed to us doing what we've been born to do. Right. They want us to do what they want us to do. So they had to impose their will for us to do it, right? So now you fast forward, and we ain't got to go to like, this whole huge, deep, slavery infested kind of lesson. But it's important to identify because this is where the beginnings of what you know as roller skating history starts to happen. The majority of the slaves that come in, they come in the South. That's North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama. Okay. That whole space right there. And for anybody, and this is whoever's tuning in worldwide, these are all states in the U.S. If you've never been to the U.S., these are all states that it is that are divided into territories. And the South is considered to be like Mississippi, like Alabama, like the deep South, which is where a lot of the racism and all begins, which is why the racist South is always considered what it is, because it's the origin of where Africans, becoming on the slave trade in that point. Now, here's what happens after we come here, after you fast forward through all the mistreatment. The Great Migration happens. When the Great Migration happens, all of the slaves and everyone that was freed in the South would then they would move towards the North and the Midwest and the Northwest to then, to be free. But with them, they would take their individualized African cultures and different other cultures that it is they've learned, like while they were here stateside, with them when they go. So if you ever wonder why Atlanta is the way it is, Chicago, New York, or LA or any of those, it's because of the Great Migration. It's the same thing that happens with music. They're all different because they have a different cultural origin. The Great Migration made it to where when everybody distributed and went their own way, they took different aspects of their culture with them when they went. And that then became a mainstay for where they would take up now multiple generations of their people in an area. So when you look at an area like Chicago and you talk about jazz, or you talk about like doo-wop, or you talk about the music, or you look at New York, like for Harlem, and all of what it is that was happening there during the Renaissance, that's not just random. That's the Great Migration. Okay. So by the time you get into and you wonder why none of us really skate the same and none of us have any of this stuff that we do the same, it's all because of the Great Migration. Now in skating, we've had a great migration of our own, to where the styles then get created in these different spaces, right? So if the beginning starts with force and we start to have to fight in, just because we went to the north and we went to these different areas, it doesn't mean that we escaped racism. That was still very much apparent, but it just wasn't as heavy as it was in the South.
Right.
But we still had to deal with it. So when you look at Chicago specifically, which is the alpha for Black roller skating, not just JB, but for Black roller skating in general, that's where stuff starts to shift. There's this thing called it's called CORE. It's called the Congress of Racial Equality. CORE was charged with the very first sit-ins, also known as stand-ins, which is where they would block the entry doors and chain themselves together to prevent entry of patrons trying to get into a business. Now in Chicago, there was a roller rink known as White City Park. White City Park was kind of like a mixture of like an amusement park and roller skating rink and kind of like overall recreational area. Now it used to be called White City because if you were in a plane, you could see the lights for miles because it was so bright.
Right.
Now, White City Park also took on the connotation of being strictly for whites only, which is what it was known as with White City Park, right? Now, it was named White City Park because of the lights, but it took on that connotation because there were no blacks that were going out there and they weren't even allowed to skate out. So what happened is the blacks that started to notice what was happening, they launched a sit-in and they launched a stand-in. And what they did is they went and boycotted the rink and they prevented patrons from getting in, white or otherwise, until they dropped the support for the rink so low that the rink had to not only change its name once they actually got a lawsuit as well, and they also they dropped the attendance rate so low that the rink didn't have a choice. They were either going to go out of business or they had to make way for blacks.
Wow.
So what they decided to do was they decided to make way for blacks. And there was two significant things they had to do. The first, they had to change the name. So it got changed from White City Park to Park City. The second was they had to have a Black night, something that was actually for the blacks to actually attend. And for this particular thing, they brought in who would be the first Black rink owner and the first Black rink manager, who would be known as Jimmy Davis. Jimmy Davis was hired by the rink owner to then regulate the blacks at Park City, at White City Park. So on the Black nights, Jimmy Davis would then handle what it was. So in doing so, and being then we started to make our way and start to integrate the very first spaces. Now, the thing is, we're still not skating at a lot of the same sessions as whites, but we're starting to occupy our own space within a space, right? But we still needed something that was of our own. So now when the rink owner died from Park City, he actually left the rink to Jimmy Davis. But by that time, it was actually in financial trouble. So now it's like it's starting to go under, and regardless, he can't really bail it out. But there was something more new that was building. Because of what Jimmy Davis was doing at Park City, he then would get hired to do and to manage the Savoy Ballroom. The Savoy Ballroom would be where the alpha of Black roller skating begins. That is the very first roller rink that had an all-Black session and was welcomed solely for Black people. It is the alpha of what it is that we do. In the Savoy Ballroom, just like what it is we talked about with 12 to 5 a.m. And why we skate in those time frames. You remember kind of like something I was mentioning to you like in conversation. The 12 to 5 a.m. is considered to be the quote unquote midnight ramble. The Midnight Ramble was a time where blacks were allowed to attend movie theater showings. And it was the only time that we were allowed to go to the movies because whites attended the movie theater showings during the day. So at night, that would be when we would dress up and we would go to movie theater showings. We adapted that same model at the Savoy Ballroom because we wanted people to see us as a people of class. So that's why when you went roller skating, you didn't wear regular clothes, and why most of the stuff that it is that you see from back in the day of those pictures, you never see T-shirts and jeans. You never see baseball caps and hats. You see full suits. You see nice dresses, nice shoes, because we always wanted to be seen as a people of class, as a wrestling. And understanding that, that's where a lot of those things start to kind of come in. So in understanding that, that's where you start to get those connections and those dots start to connect those pieces, right? And the Savoy becomes that outfit. Now, who was the manager of the Savoy? Jimmy Davis was the manager of the Savoy. The Savoy Ballroom was also known to have the best skaters in the world, which were skate guards. To be a skate guard at the time, you had to be the best skaters. The best skaters were skate guards. Now we don't know what the hell they do. Now they just got striped shirts on and they just blowing whistles around and they can barely skate, right? But now it's a different day. But back then, for you to be a skate guard, you had to be the best skaters. And that's what it is that the Savoy had. The Savoy was known as, same way, just kind of like how it was more so like in Harlem. Anybody, if you don't know what the Savoy Ballroom is, the Savoy started actually in Harlem, New York. And then there's a Chicago Savoy, which would be what it is that we have. And so the Savoy Ballroom by itself becomes a really big pivotal point in black roller skating because it had a live band. There was no organ music in the Savannah. You know what I mean? There was no organ music in the Savoy. There was only bands, and these bands played music nonstop, and that rink was open 24 hours a day. So that the bands would actually rotate out. And one of the biggest things about the Savoy was the music was never allowed to stop. It was never allowed to stop. So the bands would just rotate out. So while a band is starting to kind of taper off and get into it, the new band is getting ready to take the place of the band that was right before it. And it would just continue like that. So the music never stopped, which is why the big band sound is a critical component of the JB style, because the JB style's biggest component for music is live band. And that's where it comes from. It comes from the Savoy, and also in there, they also danced and did dances like the Lindy Hop and, you know, just all those different things that it is that you see from those pictures from back in the day. So when you look at that space and then you start to identify and you start to see where all these different things connect, this is where the history starts to really become something. And that's where I say, like, when you take a look at black roller skating, now remember all of what it is that I said thus far, just in this piece. Slavery, Great Migration, then we have to fight, once again, we have to fight, you know, different racism and all this extra stuff that it is that we have to do to even get into the roller rink. We haven't even begun to create anything yet. We don't have any styles yet. We haven't made it there. We're still fighting just to be able to go around in circles, okay? So then by the time you fast forward, then now we finally get our own space that is known as the Savoy. And from the Savoy, everything can begin. You want to know why? Because it's the first time that everybody that is African American gets the chance to share ideas, share concepts, share experiences, utilize the systems. There were skaters from the Savoy that were being used in other ways and other different things of different fights that it is that were happening, not only through Chicago, but through the Midwest. And that was happening because there were incidents that were happening of racism where some of the black patrons were getting pushed down, getting beaten down, getting chased. Arms were getting broken because they were attending some of these sessions. So they used to bring in some of the skate guards from the Savoy to then come in to protect them because they were the best skaters. Right. So then what they did is, and this is something that y'all may not know, is the skate guards from the Savoy used to get hired by different rinks who it is that actually did have black patrons to come and teach the skaters how to skate. When they increased their skate ability, it gave them the ability to play defense as opposed to offense. So when somebody was trying to skate up to you and push you down, they couldn't do it if you could outskate them, if you could outmaneuver them, if you were faster than them, if you were speed. So they used the Savoy Ballroom skaters to teach and to educate those skaters about how to learn and how to be able to build and how to get that stuff down. So by the time you got somebody coming at you, like, you know, oh, you shouldn't be here, or they're calling you names, guess what? you've already did an eagle spread this way, a low kick this way, you double back this way, and they done ran into the wall. So now they're hurt. So now it turns into a whole thing, right? Because now you got a rink full of skaters and where it is. And this is where I say that skating becomes serious, because we used it as a defensive mechanism against the hate. And that put us in a better position to move forward. Now, how were we able to do that? It first took everybody unifying. See, back then, it was easier for them to unify because they all were fighting the same things. Everybody was fighting racism. Whether you like me or not, we hate them more because they're the ones that's doing it to us, right? So we're all unified in the fact of the mistreatment, right? But it's sad that it takes that to do it. You know what I'm saying, Drew? What's the word? It's sad that it takes that to do it, but it's more so like that is what's true. And that's why I say like a lot of that seriousness, and it all starts there. So when somebody says, well, why do y'all take this so serious? It's because all of our ancestors died to get in here so we could roll. They didn't just say, okay, we're just going to take it. Like they could have went to another rink. They could have just not skated at all. But they decided to endure the beatings and to endure the mistreatment, get in all of these different things that we had to be subjected to just to have the ability to choose whether or not we could skate or not. We still wanted the choice, whether we choose to skate or not. Like, imagine not having a choice. Imagine you like, you know what, I want to go skating today. And you have the option and the privilege to be able to say that. But then back then, it wasn't even an option. Yeah. You could not go skating because it wasn't something for you. Roller skating was always known as something for the affluent, for the wealthy. That's what it was. In the beginning, it was only for the wealthy who could afford it. But see, what's so crazy is the people who were in the lowest positions became empowered the most to the highest position because we use skating to free ourselves and liberate ourselves. And because we use skating to free ourselves from our conditions, it meant more to us. So by the time we do take it on, it's the hardest thing to get for us, which is why we want our recognition and respect in what it is. And that is why we take it so serious today. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, so, man. That was heavy. That was heavy. Is this like, does culturally in the US, is this something that everyone knows? Does everyone know this story?
I don't think everybody knows, the story, because the biggest thing about it is the history that it is that I know, the history that it is that I've learned, the history that it is that I've sought and really wanted to understand. You know why I wanted to know and understand it? Because I wanted something to stand on. I knew that there were people that skated before me, but I didn't know who they were.
Yeah, you know
what I'm saying? I knew that there were people that were skating in there. I knew my mom skated. I knew I had family members. My uncle skated. I knew that but then I just kept going back. I kept going backwards and asking questions. And then I used to ask people questions they didn't have answers for me. And then I have people that it is that, well, they said one thing and then they were more like credit themselves more, meaning like they're going to put themselves in it. Like, yeah, well, I did this and so on and so on. And I'm just trying to figure out and answer, what the simple question is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for me, a lot of times I didn't get the answers. So what I hated was the fact of when I came into the skate world, which is some things that it is that I'm trying to change for people. Just kind of come in. When I came in, there was no new skater orientation for me to know what this was, how this got here, why are we doing this, and why this is something that we've been here doing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing here.
Yeah, like nobody said, hey, you're young. This is your first skate event? Okay, can I get all of the new skaters out on the floor? Okay, now that all of the new skaters are here, more so kind of like out on the floor, does everybody see who they are? Everybody else that you see that's around here, they've been skating for a long time. Let's get some mentors, get some people, and they're going to educate you and show you and teach you the ropes, or just have a conversation with them about where they're from or what they do or what skating is we're in. See, for us, we always thought that skating, like in Chicago, when you skate into a different space or you skate a different style and you see other styles for the first time, you think that everywhere skates like you. That's what every city thinks. Mm-hmm. The first time that a skater steps outside of where they're from and they go skate somewhere else, guess what they think? Everybody skates like us because that's all they know. All they know is what it is that they've done. They don't think that everybody skates a different style. The very first time I ever stepped into a national skate party, you know how it is I even got invited to it? It was based off of my skill set. Somebody said, you're really, really good, Reggie. You should come to this party, this, that, and the third. And I was like, okay, I'll be down. But then I found out it was 25 and up. I wasn't 25. I was only 17 at the time. But they said, hey, look, come with me. And, I'm going to make sure that it is that you get in. So then when I went and I got in and I took a look around, I didn't see the skaters that were from where I was from. I didn't see the skaters that, I mean, I saw skaters that it is that did my style. Like there were skaters that it is that I knew that it is that rocked and did, you know what I'm saying, the same style as me from the same city and stuff like that. But I didn't know that it was all these different types of styles. I didn't know that it was all these different types of skaters. And it was the most skaters that I've ever seen on the floor in my life. In my head, I had a million questions before I even got there, because when I went into the skate party for the first time, I'm like, man, I've been doing this, man. I'm cold. I got this, no problem. Like soon as I stepped in there and I saw that floor, I said, hell no. Like this is something completely different. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So when I saw that floor and I saw what they could do, and I'm like, how are y'all even skating with all these thousands of people on the floor? That was a thing for me. But I never asked any questions or even knew like what it was but then there were other points of discovery that kind of allowed for me to kind of learn a little bit more. But most of it was really like a lot of like my own journey and research. And I stopped getting to the point where it is that I was just kind of relying on like what other people said as opposed to what I could read and kind of authenticate. Because I felt like it was important. It's not to say that they were lying. It's just to say for me to pass on information, it's better if you can source it, right? Like everything that I just told you all, every single bit of information that it is that I just told you all, like simple and plain in a lot of ways is in all these books that are right here. You know what I mean? Which I'll share a little bit later. But a lot of the information that I'm talking about is confirmed and authenticated in a lot of these books because I've read them. It's important. It's my history. And I want to know about it because it's important to me. It doesn't have to be important to anybody else, but it can be important to me. And from there, I determine what it is that my decisions will be kind of like moving forward. And that's why I say it's important for us to understand our history and how we get here and why we do what we do, because it's not random.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? It's not random. You know what I mean? So I think in a lot of places, whether you're dealing with in London and where we are, it's important to understand your own personal cultural identity so you can empower yourself. Yeah. Right now, you can't be empowered, as I look at your hair, that's African. That's a cultural space that it is that you occupy with your hair. It's something to be proud of. It's something to be empowered by, because an afro at the time meant righteousness, meant black pride, meant natural, meant authentic, mentioned, you know what I mean? That's a big thing. Yeah. So when you see someone like Kaepernick sporting an afro for what his causes are and what he's doing it to empower himself and lean on the things of the past. The people that it is that you know of that have popularized like the afro, when you look at like, Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 and what it is that they were doing, or you look at Angela Davis and what it is that she was doing, that all becomes about pride. That's what it is. It's pride. The same thing like I talk about like with my hair, and just braids, like this is African. They've categorized it as urban, as ghetto, as hood, but it's African. It becomes more so like our own personal traditions. It's like, have you ever heard of a story where rice used to be laid in the braids of women so that they could feed their children? Like as they could hold on to the actual food source for their kids, they used to lay rice in between the braids and braid the hair on top of the rice so that when they needed to feed, they could undo the braid and then reveal the rice and add a water source and then be able to feed their children. In Africa, something like watermelon is considered to be a great nutrient source and a great supply for water, for hydration. Here in the US, guess what they say? It's something that now has a racial connotation, that where it turns into watermelon and fried chicken, and it's identified with racism. You see what I'm saying? And it's not to say that there's a flip narrative, but the biggest thing about it is we can be proud of who we are and what we've contributed, but we first have to know what that is. We have to know what our contributions are before we can be proud of what there are. You know what I'm saying? That's an important space, Yeah,
definitely, man. Yeah, it's so heavy. It's so much to think about. But again, like you said, it's important. And again, you can't go forward without any roots. You can't grow without any roots. And I think it's important for us to at least have a foundational understanding of where we come from and why we do what we do, in order for us to continue to progress. Because one of the conversations that we had is that when the kind of COVID, like the newer skaters popped on the scene, when the TikTok skaters popped on the scene, it hit us so heavy because there weren't really much in way of roots, Now like, the culture's coming back to what I remember it, closer to what I remember it being when I started, which was like like I don't want to say black, but yeah, like black. It was so black.
Hmm.
So the cultural, the music was that was what I remember. You know, I remember um feeling comfortable around people that I recognized. You know,
Right, right, right.
and I feel like when again, like when the COVID the COVID hit and a lot of the newer skaters came on the scene, it became about growing a platform and more about
Mm-hmm.
growing a social presence as opposed to having a
Hmm.
really deep love and a deep passion for skating. Just in what it was. One of the questions I wanted to ask you was
Yeah.
how did we pivot from organ music to live bands to what it is that you do and T Rail does and Neeks
Mhm.
does? How did that work? How did that progression go?
Um, well, of course, naturally, with black roller skating, you're looking at the big band sound, right? So you're looking at everything that it is that is coming in live band, Harlem Renaissance, all that is live band, Cab Calloway, all that stuff. And so if you ever wonder kind of like about like your history, like as a people, and one of the things that you could follow in skating, the best way for you to get the most authentic story that can be authenticated is to follow the music. The music will tell you everything you want to know. And if you look at the big band sound, like just more so kind of like what was happening in Savoy, that's and don't get me wrong, they had the same thing as what was the name of the Copacabana.
Okay,
If you look at the Copacabana, that was their version
right.
of what the Savoy was. Playing at the Copa, or like even when the Temptations, what I'm saying, performed at the Copa for the first time, it was like a big thing. A black act like performing at the Copacabana. For us, it was like, like I said, with the Cap Callaways and the Sammy Davis Juniors and those people that it is, the Nicholas brothers and those people that it is that perform in all these different spaces, that was different, but it's all to live band. Now, organ music was it for a very long time because there was no such thing as a vinyl record. That doesn't come until like to where people could afford it at the level for the roller rinks until like the 70s. But everything was like all organ music because it was just an instrument you could come and everything was all bop, 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 and foxtrot and ballroom and so on until the live band was like, look, you got to move this around a little bit more. You know what I mean? You got to give a little bit more energy to this, a little bit more vibe. And then by the time you get to the 70s, that's where you start to get into the vinyl record and where you start to get into jazz. Jazz becomes first in that utilization of a black creative element that it is that we then skate to. So your Count Basie's, your Thelonious Monks, that's the stuff that it is that they were skating to when the vinyl record first drops. That's the music that it is that had some movement to it and has some different feel to it. So when the vinyl record comes, that's where stuff starts to shift. If you know anything about Bill Butler, who's originally from Detroit and then really like laid his foundation in New York and in Brooklyn and all of what is what is known as kind of like New York skate history. He talks heavy about jazz. He talks heavy about getting a jazz record to be played for the first time. That's what he wanted to skate to because that's what they were doing, at the Arcadia where it is that he was from, more so like in Detroit, and that was a different feel. And understanding that and knowing that and understanding his history, you start to realize how heavy an influence that jazz plays. Before we even get to funk or we get to soul or we get to any of that, it's jazz. But the vinyl record becomes the most critical component of the evolutional musical history that is black roller skating. When the vinyl record happens, that's where stuff starts to shift because we start to can do things in a different way, which is why I always say where the music gives life to the movement itself, right? Like, imagine this. Imagine the skate and all the skate parties that we skate or skate events now, but we only skate to organ music.
Right.
It's going to be the most boring, most lack thereof of rhythm, most raisin and potato salad vibe that it is that you've ever seen
Right.
as it relates to roller skating. And the reason why is because it doesn't have any rhythm. It doesn't matter how James Brown used to play an organ in the Wurlitzer, back in the Famous Flames. And I love James Brown to death. But James Brown isn't known for what he was playing with the organ.
Right.
He's known for what happened when the band came together.
Yeah.
And the movement starts to begin and the movement starts to happen. And that's where everything starts to kind of pull itself together. So when the vinyl record happens, that's where stuff starts to really kind of get that moving. But imagine that. Imagine just like at a skate party, we're like, all right, Women only, and it's more organ music. Men only, more organ music. Backward skate, more organ music. You can't create anything.
Right.
So in order to create, you need inspiration, and that's what music does. So Black people, African people, have always been a people of rhythm, of not only just since the beginning, but just in everything that it is we touch. Our type of rhythm and how we hear music and how we interpret it physically, it's different. That's what musicality is. Musicality is the physical embodiment of sound. So when someone plays something, what makes the moment special as a skater is when they make the music come alive. They give it a heartbeat. They give it something that says that now that's good. The music gives power to that because it allows your body to move in different ways. And that's where the vinyl record starts to come in and play its whole position as far as kind of like music goes. You need that music and you need a certain type of it to get it. So by the time you get to like, with jazz and you start to push towards the 70s, now you're coming into the disco era. And the disco era, which was like the big cash cow of what was roller skating, because everybody was skating, every superstars, athletes, everybody wanted to skate. The disco, the disco, the disco. And Bill Butler is the king of roller disco. You see what I'm saying? For all of what it is that he was doing at the time. And that's where you start to get into like your disco ballads, your funk, and, I'm saying, and a lot of that earlier stuff.
Right.
For the JB style specifically, a lot of people think that our origin begins with James Brown, and that's just not true. James Brown becomes just the major fixture of what it is that the style is. But that's not its alpha. Its alpha is the Savoy Ballroom and the big band sound. And then it goes to rock music, because you got to remember, for the longest part in time, Black acts were not allowed to appear on covers of major albums, which is why when you see a lot of albums from the back in the day, you never see pictures of Black acts on the covers because they weren't allowed to do that. They were allowed to make the music, but they weren't allowed to be visibly seen. So by the time you get into, past, in the rock era, everything was moving and being able to get an understanding, and understanding it became like in the quote unquote blue-eyed soul. So for us, rock music was a big thing. Queen, Led Zeppelin, all huge mainstays in JB culture. Loggins and Messina. Anybody who knows who Kenny Loggins is, he did like Over the Top and Top Gun and those songs. That is a mainstay in JB. So rock music, Genesis, Phil Collins, that stuff is a mainstay in the JB style. Now, by the time you get to James Brown, this is where the culture itself starts to take shape, where you start to can identify different types of rhythm, the dance movements of James Brown, to start to pull those in. So that's how JB becomes JB through James Brown, and its biggest influence. Its biggest influence becomes the music of James Brown and the culture and the soul for what it is, and the style itself is named after that individual. You see what I'm saying? And that's just on the JB aspect. But now let's go to another city. Go to Detroit. Look at the Motown sound. The Motown sound, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, the Supremes, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, Stevie Wonder, all that music and all that stuff right there, guess what? All that powers the Detroit style. Function at the Junction and all that. These are culturally, you know what I'm saying? Like these are cultural spaces that it is that they then partner with, that then now to elevate and take this thing to a whole nother different type of vibe. You see? So Detroit has the Motown sound. Chicago had rock music, disco, jazz, soul, and then what would be like, of course, the funk of James Brown. All that is wrapped up in there. But then you get down to Atlanta, you look at the South, look at what it is that's influencing them. You see what I'm saying? So it's like all of these areas have a different type of music, different type of feel that it is that allows for them to be able to kind of elevate. But each point, each space then empowers us even more. And that's where the music starts to kind of take those connections. So you go from, from those different spaces and then the music is what really gives like light, and life to like everything else that is.
Yeah. Damn. It's so interesting. Like I never would have thought about like how again, like how the music split up and kind of so how did the styles form then? Like around that, like where did that, you know what I mean? Like how did the different styles, because we don't, I guess I'm looking at the history that you're talking about and trying to figure out in ways that it has a a kind of natural formation
Yeah.
to where it started to where it is, right? Because
Right.
I'm trying to identify where I guess we are right now, like currently,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
trying to figure out what direction we're going and looking at like where our style comes from and how we will continue to develop a style using the influences of like again like the Americans and like other places in Europe, like using we're kind of like a blender of styles. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I'm just trying to figure out like where does the natural progression go from the like the JB style being born from like rock music and then being the music that we hear now from producers like yourself.
Mm. So the thing is when you look at everything has its own points of origin, right?
Yeah,
So when you look at its own point of origin as it relates to things like musically, even that is a whole journey by itself,
yeah,
right? Like put it like this: why of all the people that it is that we've heard music from, like, and even in looking at Chicago, even with the rock music and the soul and the jazz, why was James Brown the full power embracement, of us embracing like James Brown, the JBs, Maceo? Like, why did we embrace that and take that on full power? Like what was there? Why that, right? But if you listen to the rhythms and if you listen to what's there and what he was talking about and all of the different influences and spaces for what it is and what got created, that evolution happens naturally because it takes people to create to do it. And if you're drawing the most inspiration from James Brown's music, if we're creating the best movements, if we're creating the best moves, if we're getting the smoothest and we have the best routines, if we're unifying the most, if we're playing this nonstop, and this is what it is that we choose, it's because it's inspiring us the most. Inspiration is priceless. So whatever it is you choose, it's no different than like how Barry White is in the DMV area. Like they rock with Barry White super heavy in his music down there in the DMV, in Baltimore, and in DC. Like that's a thing for them. Now, have they developed a style to Barry White's music? Now that you would have to ask them. But at the same time, it's more so it's a part of what they do. But they don't call their style Barry White. We call our style JB. You see what I'm saying?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like, so that's the difference between like of how it is that it looks like. And when you take a look at like the different formation of the different things musically, I don't think that anybody just kind of like says, okay, this is what we're going to be influenced by, and then it just goes there. I think what happens is this music becomes a part and around of what's happening in culture around you, and then you draw inspiration from it to then create something else, and then other people start to catch on to it and draw inspiration from that too, and then there's a unification under that flag. You know what I'm saying? I think that it's more so kind of from that standpoint. Florian, you said, did James Brown know about JB music, meaning as in like the remixes? We think that there are points where it is that he might have kind of came across it. Maybe one of the biggest things that we wished was that he saw what we did. Now I remember Nate, true story, Nate at one time tried to book James Brown to come to Chicago and actually perform and actually see what it is that was happening, but he actually couldn't do it because he was on tour at the
Right.
time. And that's something that it is that Nate had talked about a very long time. It was a big thing for him. It was like a big project that it is that he did at one point in time. He did end up booking Fred Wesley to come, who was the horn player from James Brown's band. He came and he played live at Glenwood, and that was, really excited to do. We used to do a James Brown memorial skate for James Brown, when he passed away. So it was like a really big deal. I mean, for somebody like me, James Brown is a big deal. James Brown is a really huge deal and is a really big influence to me because I feel like he's one of the few artists that has the most sons. I did this project which was called like James Brown is my father, which basically says that if you listen to James Brown and you took on some of the principles of his music, then you became better. Even when it is if your father wasn't around and you utilize the music of James Brown and his messages, it would help to kind of like develop for you to be a better person. So I think that that's one of the biggest things about it. I feel like James Brown is such a cultural icon in so many spaces. And I feel like of the youngest children that James Brown has, and as I identify children, the parallels, if you're looking to understand it, take hip hop. Hip hop is a child of James Brown. Everything and the cultural elements of what it is, it's a child of James Brown. You look at dance for what is breaking and locking and popping and all that. And that's a son or daughter of James Brown. You see what I'm saying? but the JB style of skating and roller skating, we become the youngest child.
Right.
Because everything else predated us. You know what I'm saying? Before its full origin. And even though our origin goes back to like the 60s and the 50s, when it's known as a JB, that doesn't happen until the 70s. And that's where it is, where it shifts, you know, a little bit as it relates to it. And that's why I say like it's such a big thing. For me, James Brown is highly influential for me in a bunch of different ways, because I mean, of course, I used to be a huge fan of Michael Jackson and James Brown. You know what I'm saying? Greatest artist is James Brown. I mean, Michael Jackson's greatest artist is James Brown. He was the one that it is that influenced him. And he's still considered to be the greatest to ever live. You know, when Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, when they tried out for Motown with Berry Gordy, what did he try out and what was he singing? He was singing, I Got the Feeling, you know what I'm saying, by James Brown. So, you know, these are all the things and pieces where it is that I feel like it just kind of connects itself. But musically, I feel like each one of these different pockets and spaces, I feel like every style draws inspiration. Like, look, over there in London, like when I was there, every area that I go to, I try to understand the history, because you all are starting to dominate, like as far as like African-American skaters. Now, you're dominating in an area where you're not meant to dominate, okay? So the point of origin for you all, you know what I'm saying, is more so kind of like is comes in many different spaces. It's different for how it is for us here in the US, right? So when I'm talking to some of your OGs and people that it is that Kai introduced me to, and those that it is that go back to the earliest origin for what Black roller skating was, or then they credit that cultural beginning for you. They start in Jamaica. They start in the Caribbean for you guys. That's big. That says that there's a cultural influence of Jamaican history that then starts to influence what it is that you all have there. And hearing some of those stories about, you know, like banana twine being tied to roller skates because they couldn't afford them and they were so fast. Mm-hmm. And that part of y'all history is a big thing, because guess what we have in common? Poverty. And guess that's exactly the same thing that it is that he was saying, as far as kind of like when he was talking about some of the history of like what skating was in London and what they had to fight for and how it was for them when they were coming up and how many of them went in. Now, one thing I noticed is that they all rallied together. All of the Blacks were rallying and moving and skating as a unit and doing things together. But poverty seems to be like the biggest unification here. Like when we have nothing, we are the create something people, no matter what country that it is that you're from.
100%.
It's like, and you can see that, so that when we all run into each other, it's so like we all know each other, because we've all been subjected to the same things. We've all had nothing and then had to invent something. And that's what you have over there in your history. Your history, you have Jamaican culture that it is that influenced what is known now as what the London scene is. You see what I'm saying? The reason why you all do what you do. You know, him speaking to, why are those skates the skates that you all skate to? How did this happen? How does this get here? See, a lot of you all have to tap in with the people who it is that are older than you, the ones that it is that were already there. But what happens is there's really no connection. So I applaud people like Kai and the NC and yourself and other people that it is that are there with wanting to get to some of this information and wanting to get. But one of the biggest sources you're going to get is not necessarily me, because remember, that information becomes new to me too. But the reason why I know it and I get to learn it is because I ask the questions. I wanted to know who they were, because I'm like, I see a lot of people around here that look like me, but I know they're not from the same country as me. I know my origin is Africa. I've traced my line. I know where my people are from. But you're saying you're from Jamaica. Okay, so now how do you get from Jamaica to London? How does that happen? What year is this? When does this happen? Who came with you? What was the African American you saw before you came to skate? Who were you seeing? And then other people are crediting still the same people. You see? See, it's important that you all start to know all of their names, and you know who they are, and you listen to their stories, and you understand what they had to deal with or what they were subjected to. So that way you understand that you're a part of a history and a legacy that matters, and that you really get it and you feel empowered to do so. When I skate and the things that it is that I do as a skater, I feel empowered because of my people. Not because of just like my own history, but because of the history that preceded me. So to me, it's powerful when I read the stories or I hear and I say, okay, why am I the only person that it is that's in this city council meeting fighting for a rink in a city that it is that I'm not even from? Why am I the only one here?
Right.
I don't see the whole community here. I don't even see the community that it is that I'm fighting for present in this. Now, why is that? they've been told that this is a thing. They've been told that this is important. Why are they not fighting for it? Right now, here's the thing. Now, why would I need to do that? I do it because my ancestors did it. I did it because there were people that hopped on the buses and went down to Montgomery and walked across bridges and boycotted and got buses bombed and all. They did all of that stuff because they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. And that's what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for something much bigger than me. I love my city. I love my style. I love what it is that we got going on. But what the biggest thing is, and this is maybe something that you all can discover too. At one point, I wanted to be the best skater that it is that I could be. Then I wanted to be the best skater that I could be for myself. Then once I occupied those spaces, I wanted to be a skater that made a difference. Then I wanted to be a skater that it is that contributed and left something for others to follow. And then it stopped being about whatever it is that I want. And then it started being about what my people needed. Yeah. And that's when it starts to shift to a whole nother space. And it doesn't become about what it is that I want. It doesn't even become about being the best. It becomes about making it a little bit easier and a little bit better for your people to exist in a space that you love. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to do. Mm-hmm. And to do that, it requires a totally different type of element to yourself to be able to do that. So for me, it shifts because there are no awards for that. There are no trophies for that. Like just because I'm in a city council meeting here too, it's not like, let's celebrate Reggie. No, you won't even know that I'm there.
Exactly.
The only people that will know that I'm there will be the ones that says, okay, we're going to have a stay of execution, or we can't move forward with demolishing this roller rink because Reggie stood up here and basically gave us points that were actually true. He opposes what this is. And even though he's only one person, we only had to have one opposition.
To be free.
And that now gives us enough.
Okay. All right, we're back. I don't know what happened.
Okay. No problem. But yeah, so the thing is like, it's, and that's just what it is. For me, it's different. For me, my fight is different. My spaces are different. Everything that it is that I do or that it is that I'm occupying or what I'm trying to do, it's bigger than me, man. It's so much bigger. If I want to teach people to respect skate music so we can occupy our own spaces in industry and our music start to take on new life and people start to respect it and look to what this is, I have to make something big happen. I have to do things that people haven't done before me. I have to occupy spaces and show that this is valuable. That's the only way that people believe in it. So that means that I have to convince you that it's valuable, and I have to occupy and do and operate in a whole nother different type of space. So my fight personally and what it is that I work on as it relates to the stuff that I do, it's a different type of fight. The things that it is that I've been able to be benefit from and be a part of projects or have my own history and make it all means nothing if I can't make something better for our people. If I can't create a better space or make something better for us as a people, I have failed in my own personal career as a skater, because that's not why I was here. Like, I feel like I'm here for something. I do, not even to get all spiritual, but I feel like my space of what it is that I do in roller skating is not necessarily going to be for other people to really understand. I believe that what my contribution is and the gifts that it is that I'm given and the information and the different doors that may open for me or the ones that I may fight to open, I believe it's for a much bigger purpose than I can see. So until such time as I fulfill that and it hits and that I feel like, okay, now we've just gotten an inch further in us as a people to really make some headway, then it's just like I keep doing what it is that I'm doing and start to try to make, as much headway as I can and work into the spaces that it is that I can to do so. And in doing that, and you're gonna run into these things where you are, and I tell Kai and everybody else, man, along the journey for you to make a difference, you're gonna be the subject of so much ridicule, of so many different things and so much negativity. And you have to be built to last. I mean, God built me to last. So it's kind of like, it's nothing that it is that I can't really deal with. And I don't necessarily experience like a lot of like hate or disrespect or nothing like that. But what I'm saying is there are ways and spaces along the journey where people will always be critical of why you're doing what you're doing, or they think that it may be for what this is, or this is how they feel like it should be, or whatever. And that's just not how we make any headway as a people. As much as we celebrate Martin Luther King, he was the #1 most hated man in the world.
Yeah.
As much as he celebrated peace, He wanted everybody to get along. He wanted everybody to work together. It was nothing but he was the absolute most hated man there was, right? So it's kind of like you think about him and we talk about, like, hey, look at the ridicule that Jesus got. You know what I'm saying? Look at what he had to deal with. He had to take on all the sins of the world. So the thing is in each space, the people that it is that create the greatest impact, like in any culture or any form or any space, they have to be some of the strongest because they have to be able to take it all on to just get just an inch further and an inch closer to what it is. And that's just kind of like, that's what I'm prepared to do.
Yeah.
And that's why it is that I do what I do. So how do I support myself, or how do I make it happen? I mean, I always have the support of my family and my wife and my friends and, you know, all my other fellow skaters that it is that show big love, and the mentors and my OGs and everybody else. But one of the biggest things I empower myself with is knowledge. And long as I have that, I can't lose. I really can't, because if they could deal with the fire hoses, then I can deal with a fire hose. If they could deal with the dogs, I can deal with the dogs. If I can deal with a couple beatings, I can take those too. You know what I'm saying? If we have to get subjected, if we got to spend a couple nights in jail because we're sitting in and we're doing, you know, trying to make things better, I can take a couple nights. Yeah. I can do a couple of things. We could deal with the same things because we came from the same blood. Should it be necessary? No. But it is a fight that we have currently in the present day, and we fight for it in different spaces. And in Black roller skating, we have to do more than just skate. We have to be what skating is given to each one of us, you know? And I'll pose that question to you, just more so like you and just skating. Like, what has skating given to you that you want to give back to it?
That's an easy question. It was a sense of community. I went in the places that I grew up. Like, I went to schools that were predominantly white. I went to Catholic schools, boys' schools. I never really. I had a few friends, but it was so hard for me to dial in and make friends who connected with me on like a spiritual level, I would say.
Right.
I realized that I had to hide. I mean, I've been skating since I was 7. I'm 26 now.
Right.
And I realized I had to hide that part of my life when I was young, and I was figuring it out. And it's only until I found the spaces that we were using that I really got to feel empowered in skating and empowered in my identity as a Black man. Because you know, I'm quite fair skinned, and it was difficult for me to kind of confirm that to myself. And skating really helped me find a community full of Black people. Culturally, it fed me. Like I was mentioning before about like the whole COVID stuff, and really, there were a lot of newer skaters who were kind of coming in and segregating themselves into their own little beginner groups. And I would go along. I would just go along and just talk to them about like a lot of the kind of UK kind of, this is our scene, this is what we do here. It's all about community, and I really tried to push forward that, try to give back that sense of community. And now I see a lot of the skaters who again isolate themselves in the beginning, coming to events, coming to roll on, coming to like some of the spaces that we have and that we throw events in. So it's definitely a sense of community. That's definitely what it is for me.
And you giving that back, and you get the ability to give that sense of community back. And that's what it is. You know, that's one of the things that it is that he gave me. He gave me a sense of community. You know, like I say in the doc, a sense of culture, a sense of cultural identity that says that there are people. There's a song where we talk about with Children of the Night, with the stylistics. It's like, you know, I search through the night for people who look just like me.
100%.
You know what I mean? Like, who look just like me and do what it is that I do. Like, it's something that it is that you see in the identification as a Black man. When you run into another Black man or another Black woman, there's certain things that it is that you don't have to speak of for them to understand. And the biggest thing is that if you don't understand anything else, you understand the aesthetic of being Black. And the aesthetic of being Black already comes with its own conditions, its own requirements, its own subjection to mistreatment in any way that it is that it comes. Now, of course, everybody's life is different, but it doesn't change the scope for which people view you. It's up to you to determine what it is. One of the biggest things that it is that I allow people to do is to understand that, one, that education doesn't just belong to white people. It's the same thing that it is that what people kind of see like even throughout like my life, like in relevance to like, you know, when you speak or you're able to articulate yourself or you're able to be able to say 2 points without slang or cursing or anything, they automatically identify that as white, when in actuality, intelligence doesn't just belong to white people.
Yeah.
Intelligence belongs to African people, to Asian people, to, you know, to all people. Intelligence is intelligence. Information is information. It's like you can't talk to me about a language and me understanding a language or understanding mathematics or something for people that it is that have invented these things. We are supposed to have knowledge of this stuff. We're supposed to know what it is or how to understand and what it is. That empowerment goes a long ways. So for me, for skating, like I think that like not only did it give me a sense of culture and community, it also gave me mentorship. You know what I'm saying? Like when I was young and I was coming up, my father was around like when I was like younger, like probably up to when I was like maybe like 12. And then after that, I ain't see him again. That was it. So in my space of like who it is of what I identify was when I lose my father, more so kind of like in the real world, in the skate world, I gain a father. I gained multiple fathers, people who would mentor me and educate me and teach me all kinds of things. You know, people that it is that would be able to give me different guidance and perspective. And, you know, just kind of like as I, you know, like when I talk about Bree sometimes and just kind of like in the mentorship, you got to remember, like if my father steps out, I think the very last time I saw my father was high school graduation when I was 16 years old. When I was 16, that was like the last time that it is that I saw my father. And then I would run into Breeze and be mentored by him by the time I turned 17, pushing 18. Now here it is, here I'm in my 30s. And he's been my mentor and somebody that it is that I've known since then. Now, is he my father? No, he's not my father, my birth father, but more so like from mentorship, from guidance. He becomes like my older brother, almost like my uncle, like someone that it is that could be my father, like in it, because what they do is they teach you the difference between right and wrong and choices of evolution in the space for what it is that you're contributing. I had other mentorships and uncles and family members that it is that looked out for me in guidance. But in my career of what it is as a skater, there were people that it is that looked out for me, that treated me like as if I was their own sons. And that's different. And that's one thing that it is that I got given in roller skating, was I got the ability for mentorship to be able to learn from the experiences of others and then have my own experiences. That's why by the time I come into my own space and when people call me OG or they call me uncle or they say love or they show love, I give them the same love that it is that I got, but I just maximize it. I make it to where like I'm there for them like on and off the floor, not just when they want to learn skate moves or they want to hear the next skate track or something like that. Like when they deal with their lives, you know what I mean? Like I try to assist in that, letters of recommendation, speaking up for them, helping them out. I mean, I've even stood in front of judges for skaters to get them out of the positions that it is that they were in because I believe in them as people. And I know what skating is doing to help change their lives. And I know that they can't change their lives inside of that jail cell. But if you grant them the space to work with individuals like myself and others who are making a difference here, then we can help to change them. And they believe that. But I've stood in front of that. I've written to that. We've written the judges. We've done things that it is as skaters to help people to do more than just in. So for us, it's a bigger deal. You know what I mean? So that's why I say when you give to skating, you have to give back whatever it is that you're taking away from it. So what it is that I've given is what's allowed for my evolution. There are a lot of things that it is that I've had that have allowed for me to do things, you know, in multiple spaces, whether educational or from a business standpoint. But the mentorship goes a long ways. So that's why, like with friends or when it comes down with people, or just like even with me and you and calling in the conversation, I got a million things that it is that I'm doing. I'm always busy. My wife will tell you. I always got something, but I can always make time for what it is that we really want to know and want to build and understand because it's important. And if this can give anybody just a little bit of inspiration to do more and to be more, then that's great. If you inspire one person, you've done something. If you inspire more, that's even better. But the biggest thing is there has to be a whole lot of spaces that it is you have to understand in this so that you understand who you are. You understand who you are with a sense of community, but here's the biggest thing, what you need to understand. And every skater that it is that's African-American, even those that now participate in Black culture and become a part of Black roller skating, regardless if you're African-American or not, you still become a part of Black culture and in essence to where it is that if you respect what this is and you appreciate what this is and you have an understanding what this is, then you represent it in a way that it is that says that what this is. The biggest way that you credit that is by always crediting the sources for which the information and your development and understanding comes from. When you do that, you empower Black people and you empower Black culture because it says without us that you would not get it. And that's important so that other people understand the value of us in all the spaces.
Yes.
For you, you may say that you found a sense of community and culture and just kind of understanding, but where you missed it part is the culture lives inside of you already.
Yeah.
Before you move and you run into anybody, before anybody learns about you or even knows your name, the culture that is the Black cultural essence that already lives inside of you, but you don't know it. You won't know it until you run into someone that is like you and that it's been there the whole time. Where you talk about maybe like your hair, like, man, I've been trying to get my hair to straighten out the whole time. You got the same problem? I've been having the same problem. You know why? Because it's cultural. You know why? Because it's something that lives in them already. So the culture lives in each one of us. It's up to us to determine what it is that we do with it. That's why we can always grow it anywhere. But you already have a home. You're already part of a community, but you also have to kind of like empower yourself with others and unify with other people so that it is that you can strengthen your community that is you come from too, you know?
I agree. Yeah. Reggie, there's a couple questions here directed to you. I don't know if you can see them. Can you see them when I put them on?
I see one. It says, when rinks closed down in the 80s, did the gang share rinks? On the West Coast, yes. The rinks were declared as neutral territory. So you could get it in anywhere else except in the roller rink, and you will be in for one hell of a problem. Yeah. So you are not allowed to, all of the roller rinks, especially more so like via West Coast, but more so like with the gangs, they were considered to be neutral territory. Mostly strictly the West. As far as Chicago, not so much. It was just kind of, if you were in the territory, you were in the territory. So it happened. But on the West Coast, that was really true. And that has really made it, that was a powerful thing for the Bloods and Crips to be able to do it. And also what they were fighting at the time. If you look at that time and that era, we have a bigger fight. It's not each other. You know what I'm saying? So for sure. So that was actually true. The gangs did declare rinks neutral territory. You said, do you think social media has led to an appropriation of Black roller skating from outside the culture? I don't think necessarily social media itself has led to that. I think there's always kind of been like an appropriation of Black culture in multiple spaces.
No, did we freeze again? Apologies for all the freezing.
And that's been present, and that's kind of had and been kind of going on and going throughout. I think we see that in everything. We see that in all cultural spaces that it is that we invent or that it is that we have to deal with. I think we see it in all these different spaces, right? So I wouldn't say that social media is what led to it. I would say that social media has kind of helped the exploitation of what that is. And what I mean by that is when you see somebody Black doing what it is that we do, skating with rhythm, doing the style, having flavor, you're not like, oh my God, I've never seen that. Like to us, you're supposed to have that. That's supposed to be what it is. Like, right. We're amazing, we're dope. But then when you see other races do it, it turns into this thing like, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread because it's not normal for them. Now, does that mean that it is like we're dealing in this black and white space and it's an us against them type of thing? No, it comes down to when people start to credit them and remove and take credit away from us. That is where the problem goes down. I had to, when we were dealing with the pandemic and articles, the documentary with the United Skates doc, the conversations of skaters and interviews with myself and a few others, these were the only things defending against the mass media and them saying that roller skating is back and it's a resurgence, and that people like how with Anna Koto, who was like the TikToker that went viral, is like the one that brought it back, and now everybody wants to do skating on TikTok, and it's you've given it new life and all these million people, and we're sitting here like, how? What have we been doing this entire time? When that happens, then it turns into a thing. Because see, now we have to fight a different fight. Now we're fighting for our own identity, and that's different. We didn't take anything away from her, but here's what she didn't do. Now, this didn't come till later. And what I mean by that is when you grow in popularity and in visibility, it comes a point to where when you do that, people want to talk to you. They want to hear what you have to say. They want to interview you. They want to talk about the rise and skate sales, and you pioneered this. And I mean, she's got like Wikipedia pages and all of these different things. And it's like, well, wait a minute. You've only been here 15 minutes.
Yeah.
We've been here 150 years. So it's kind of like, what are we doing here? You see what I'm saying? So my thing is when that happens, now we have to fight a different fight. Because now we're fighting for what's true, but now we have to fight against the mass media and all them that it is that will be influenced by her. Now, here's where it is where she could have empowered herself and still had the ability to then develop and elevate at the same time. Now, later on, she would kind of get challenged and then bring in some other source of information and so on and so on. But in your first interviews, none of this stuff is what you say. What you should say is, as a roller skater, I was influenced by Black culture and cultural spaces for minorities for which they were skating. Some of the moves and the maneuvers I do, it comes from them. The song that I'm using that you go viral from is called Jenny from the Block. Well, Jenny from the Block is Jennifer Lopez, who is from the Bronx, New York, which is the origin of hip hop, which is the origin of Latinos and Blacks as it relates to the origin of hip hop music, which you're skating to, which is a creation of African people and Latino people. That's Latino culture, right? So when you're crediting it, credit it, because you're not Jenny from the Block, right? You're from wherever it is that you're from. But it creates a false narrative when you think that it is that you move in a fashion that says that this is just what I do and I'm just kind of having a good time. It's not just as simple as just having a good time, because as popularity grows, let's say I tell you something and it's a lie. If you then tell that lie again to someone else, it becomes a part of the conversation, and now it eventually becomes a part of tradition. If that lie keeps getting reciprocated over and over again, at some point it's going to become a part of your culture, and it's going to become a cultural fixture. So if people keep saying that it is that skating is back and the resurgence of it came as a result of COVID, and they keep saying that over and over and over and over again and passing on that misinformation to someone else, that's when it becomes a part of our own personal history. Like, skating has a resurgence in 2020. For us, it never died. We've been killing since like forever and a day. We have events all over with thousands of skaters that come from all over the place. And you're saying that skating is back. You see how that hurts us?
Yeah.
But see, people like myself have to get in and fight and do interviews and speak to these things. And that's why I always tell people, when you grow in popularity, you cannot grow and have your disconnection, to the Black community from which it is that you came. You don't disconnect, or absolve yourself of all responsibility because you grow in fame and you grow in notoriety. That's not what you do. What you do is you use the platforms that you now have access to free your people, to help your people. You use those platforms to educate people on what it is. I get a million publications of people that it is that interview me for articles or for different things, or want to talk to me in interviews and different things. Find me an article where it is that I speak, that I don't give power to our community, that I don't give power to our people, that I don't talk about what's real, that I don't give them a sense of origin or history. It's consecutive across the board. It's consistent across the board, because you want to know why? The more that it is that I'm saying what I'm saying, the more that it is that it becomes visible in every viable source. At some point, somebody's going to pick it up and read it. Yeah. Somebody's going to say, you know what? I thought that roller skating came back in 2020. So you mean to tell me this thing has been around since forever and a day, and there's all these places that are out here that we did, like, who knew? You see? But now imagine me not saying anything at all. Yeah. Imagine us not talking about Black culture at all. Not Black roller skating, not nothing that it is to empower ourselves. And you know what happens? It then becomes whatever they want it to be. We have to consistently reinforce what it is. The hashtag roller skating right now returns over 2 billion in viewership and views as it relates to roller skating. 2 billion. That's a lot. You know what percentage of that is African American? You know what percentage of that? About 97%. 97% of what it is that's there is African American, or is origin in African American culture. How much do you see that doesn't have anything to do with us? Not our styles, not the way we skate, not the types of skates that we've made popular, not our movements, not our sequences, not our music. How much do you see that is completely have its own identity? You know what I'm saying? That's where it is that it turns into a totally different thing. And that's where it is you start to kind of get into a space and just kind of identify, where it is kind of like it turns into, just a totally different space. And this is kind of like how they're saying more so kind of like how Common is like, he says that I don't see color when it comes to skating, but he's like, well, good luck with that. Well, the thing is, that's great, but you don't. You don't see skate like color when it comes to skating. And unfortunately for us, when people see us, that's really a lot of all they see. And we have to change that in different ways, but we also can't change without an understanding, and that's important.
I agree.
It's important to understand.
Yeah, I agree. There's one more question there, and then I have a question for you.
Yeah, it says, how influential was hip hop to JB and other styles? I'm curious about the Rocksteady Rollers. As far as hip hop music, hip hop itself wasn't really like super influential to the JB style. Hip hop was like more so kind of something newer. It became a part of like, what it was like more so like in the 80s as kind of like you get into like the golden era hip hop. They were skating to like all of that stuff at like Rainbow and, the rink and just different places. But it really wasn't like something that was extremely influential, like as it relates to it. And I think that that's where it kind of becomes a little bit different. So I think that when it comes down to the origin for where hip hop starts to make that transition to like what will be like its whole new genre space, that's different, and we were already kind of developing those things. The funk and the soul and the jazz and the big band sounds, those right there, that will definitely be like the origins of, like the JB style. That is the heavy influence. 70s funk, 70s soul, Ohio Players, War, Brothers Johnson, all those 70s funk soul artists, that becomes a really, really, really big, aspects to where the influence of the culture is. Hip hop, not so much specifically in the influence of what it is. It becomes a little bit more influential to the producers. I would say that that's something that you could kind of like give close to like credit Damo with, because he was influenced like really heavy, like by hip hop music, and really kind of brought that element to like skate production when he came in, like with Skate 101 and drum breaks and stuff that were like really hit, like really heavy, like within the hip hop culture. I think that's something that you could credit him with, because like before that, it wasn't really being utilized as much, but the information and understanding of like hip hop elements in the JB style, that kind of comes way later, like in the 2000s. And I think he utilized that in a great way that then would kind of power his sound. So I would give it more credit there for like an aspect of culture, but not from the early origin though.
Okay. That's really interesting, man. I've learned so much from you, Reggie. I really appreciate your time, man.
Oh no, I appreciate it, man. I'm glad. I hope it all helps for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It really does. So my final question is just looking to the future. We've got we're trying to figure out how to use social media in a way that doesn't change what we, well, I guess not change, but I guess influence our styles and culture. Money is involved in the scene, heavy in the scene now.
Right.
There's so much around skating that isn't just what the origin of it is. Business and flippers there's another big one that's really having a core effect on the scene. I just want to get your takes. What do you when you do think about what the future of skating is looks like in, I don't know, maybe 100 years? What do you think?
Fast forward, and just kind of like with me, I get the chance to kind of like just kind of see it through my son, like in the youngest portion. Well, he's like 8 years old, and I mean, he loves to skate, in every single way, shape, and form. He's been submerged in skate culture since he was born, and he loves it and enjoys it, and has a great time with it. And he's found his own, just kind of like identity and space of just him doing what it is that he does, and I think that right there is important. So I see the future bright in a lot of different ways. Things moving forward. As right now, as we're working on like the Olympic space, to be able to get Black state styles competitively into the Olympics as sport, that's like a big thing for us that we're working on, a big major project right now. The reason why we're choosing that avenue is because we feel like it's one of the things that it can give our children and other fellow skaters the best options moving forward as skaters to then be able to move and navigate through the spaces that a lot of different sports already move through, to create a pipeline. Like right now, if somebody came to you and said, I want to be a professional skater, how do they start?
Yeah.
You don't know. You wouldn't even be able to tell them, just kind of like, okay, well, you do this, 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 and then you work in this, you do this competition, because it doesn't exist. Like for our styles, there is no criteria, there's no space, there's nothing that it is exists. So that's where it is that we came into, and myself and Breeze, and we created a sport. And so what we did is came up with the sport, which is titled cultural. Now, cultural is defined as the actual sport, and then it has the other styles actually listed under it. Now, cultural is designed to be kind of like how artistic skating is, and it has multiple different facets underneath it. It's the same way that it operates as styles, but it maintains all of their own individual identities and origins, and allows for people to compete in what it is. So maybe about over a year ago, we basically, went to the national governing body like here, and then really kind of put together a proposal to be able to be onboarded as a sport, and here we are. So now we operate as a sport under USA Roller Sports, which is the national governing body for roller sports here in the US. And now through that avenue, we will be able to create all of these different aspects in the competition, youth programs, in judging, in certification programs, in teaching, in scholarships, in endorsements, in sponsorships, and all those different things through that avenue. Now it's still all in development, and we're still working and making some different headway. And we like this year, kind of coming into this year now, towards the end of the year, moving into the end, you all will see a lot more moving visually through it, about it, that it is that will really start to kind of like elevate as we start to make new headways, as we start to make some other bigger decisions, like within the infrastructure and stuff like that. But that's going to be a big thing, because it'll give us the first time. This will be the first time that we have an opportunity to compete against our fellow skaters within our style space, for people that understand what we're doing. It's called cultural because it is cultural, and that's how it is that it came to be. It's called cultural because what we do is cultural, and I want people to respect what that is, so that we put the culture first, and then we roll second, and we have other people around the world to be able to develop and understand what that interest. So we look forward to the day when there can be a skate competition where someone from London can compete against somebody from the US, and somebody from Japan, and all of y'all are competing and snapping. You know what I mean? We have a kid from the Philippines that understands the snap style, or we have a kid from Russia that's doing JB that will enter the competition against homegrown Chicago-based skaters from the US. And you know what I'm saying? And someone from Brazil competing. You know what I mean? Like all of this is what's important. It's something that it is that we feel like is a very, very important thing. And it's necessary. We have to start to make new decisions, and start to make new headway. And all that we can do is try. I always say that when we make decisions as it relates to skating, they will be celebrated, and some will not. And then people will understand it, and then they won't. But one of the benefits that you get to learn from is you will get to learn from my successes, and you will get to learn from my failures. So if we succeed with something and make headway and really do something and make history and change the trajectory for how this is going, to where people develop a whole new world respect for what it is that we do in roller skating, that is where it shifts, kind of like, what the guy was saying, where he says he doesn't see any color, more so kind of like in roller skating. That's where we shift from that. We get to shift from that space and that scope when there's an appreciation for Black culture as is, where it can stop being in that space. You know what I'm saying? And that's where it is that we get to shift to where it just becomes roller skating. Right now, it becomes about Black roller skating and our own personal identity, because to a lot of people, we don't have an identity. We don't have that space. So we have to fight for it until such time as it just becomes about roller skating. And then there are contributions of Black people versus more so kind of like Black roller skating. So we have to celebrate ourselves and have enough love for ourselves and make our own headway and do our own things and tell our own stories and get into our spaces and start to make and really knock down a lot of these walls, so that we can one day shift to where it doesn't become so much about the specifics of just kind of Black roller skating, but just roller skating in general, and then a celebration of all the aspects of it that makes it there. But for us to get there, we first have to make our own marks and we have to do our own things. The same way that anyone else has done when they've made history in what it is. You know, when Jesse Owens is going against Hitler's master race as it relates to more so kind of running in the Olympics, Black people do not become empowered until he wins at the highest level, until he shows that there is no master race, until he shows that it becomes bigger than him. Now, he wasn't just running for Black people, even though that's what it is that was empowering him, but he runs now for the United States of America that absolutely hates and has a really overall disgust for African American people at the time, where we're dealing. But he still throws the stars and stripes on his back and runs a race to where he defeats and does this magnificent feat at the Olympics against Nazi Germany at the time. That created an appreciation for Black people and for Black culture, to where it didn't become about a Black man running a race. It became about an American winning. You see what I'm saying? It didn't no longer became about that, but in order to do that, that right there is where it is that it turned into like a thing. And that's what it is that he put to shame, and he silenced that. Like with Hitler and that whole, kind of BS with the Holocaust and all of that, and him saying that the Nazis were just a master race on their own. He put that to shame and told you that there was no such thing, and showed you that this is how it is that it works. And we're strong enough as a people to be able to make that headway. That stuff is important. We have to do the same thing in our own spaces. We have to prove in a lot of naysayers, and we have to knock down a lot of doors and do a lot of things that it is that people have done before us, like historically, to really be able to kind of open up and make some bigger things happen. So that's what I was saying. But I think in the future, I think we'll get there as long as we start to kind of make new history. And just like I said, I give comparisons. I like what Jesse Owens was doing because that's exactly what he did. If none of you know the story of Jesse Owens and how that is, I encourage you to read it. Read about all of what it is that surrounded that and what he was going in there fighting. He was he was dealing with Hitler, he was dealing with the Nazis, he was dealing with Nazi Germany and what was happening with the World War during that time. He had to get in there and do more than just fight for us. He had to fight for all people, and really show that this was something bigger. And I feel like we're going to have those moments kind of too, like moving forward. So in the future, one of the biggest things that I want more for us than anything is just a lot more unity, a lot more positivity, and just a greater appreciation for just for ourselves and just what it is that we do. I think that if we start to do that more and have a little bit more unity there, we can just make a lot more headway. But it's hard. It really is hard. And I mean, you can't convince some people to do what you want them to do.
No.
But all we can do is maintain our own positivity and just try to be the example. And then the rest of it, I think, can just kind of, feel and kind of put together ourselves now. We work with some of everybody. Our skate community, even though more so kind of like it's historically Black in origin, it is not just solely Black. We welcome everybody. We show everybody love. We have nothing but great things to celebrate and to fellowship with people and with relationships that it is that we have with fellow skaters. I think that that's a really, really big thing. So to me, I think that that's important enough. You know what I mean? So we appreciate some of everybody that it is that comes and contributes to what this is, no matter what you look like, as long as you understand and just respect what is and what existed before you and what will be here after you.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I was saying recently, and I said to you as well, like, I think one of the biggest things culturally as well is that there are no longer any borders. Like you're in, I mean, we're having this conversation, and 50 years ago we couldn't have this conversation.
Right, because of the technology. Yeah. Exactly,
and that's a huge step forward. And I think eventually get into this kind of this idea of unity amongst skaters, and not just kind of like skaters in your area or skaters who look like you, just skaters in general. I think that will be such a huge push towards that, and building projects that we can all participate in.
Yeah, especially with all the communities and just different mentorship. It's no different than like over the summer when I'm teaching the workshops and people are coming and participating. I mean, they're all not from Chicago, but they have love for JB culture, though. They have love for Chicago. They have love for our skate culture. They support it. They represent it in different ways. They come in and they make their presence felt. You all come to the U.S. and support our events. You come support those that it is that are building brands or viewing tutorials or whatever it is. In my classes and things that it is, it's a reflection of the world. If you look at some of the photographs and stuff from those classes, they are from all kinds of different countries and different cultural backgrounds, but they're all there to learn and appreciation and appreciate the aspect of that is Black culture, right? The aspect that is roller skating culture, that is roller skating history. They're there to learn that, to understand that, and to be a part of that. And it's something to be proud of. To be it is that you choose to participate in what it is. It says that you deemed it to be valuable. And I think that that's how we show people the proper respect, is by understanding those things. And that's why we always are willing to kind of like to give and to teach and to educate and to welcome other people in. Now, I mean, I don't speak for everybody. I'm not always going to be, you're not always going to run into the people who are going to be extremely welcoming of different aspects. And that's okay too, but for everybody else for every one person that is, there are 50 that will be. You just have to find the people that it is that you relate to the most, the ones that it is that you feel like you want to secure your journey with and learn from and know something about. Stay close to them and understand the different ways, and just develop an appreciation and look and understand there are conditions and aspects that have allowed for a lot of these things to exist. And if you understand those conditions, then you couldn't be offended by certain aspects of it. You just wait your time. You grow with the culture as it's growing, and then you find your moments where it is for you to do what it is that you need to do. And then from there, you occupy your space, and then you have a good time. And that's what appreciation and respect goes to, you know?
I agree.
Yeah, but
Reggie, thank you very much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else here has learned a lot. I'm gonna save this live, so if anyone's just here now who wants to see the rest of the live, it will be up somewhere.
Yeah.
Reggie, would you gonna recommend some books that people can read if they want to?
Yeah, I can. If you, depending on where you are, there's a few that it is that you can take a look at, depending on what it is that you really want to know and learn. One book that it is that I'll recommend is a book called Race, Riots, and Roller Coasters, and it's by Victoria W. Wilcott, and it basically talks about the struggle over segregated recreation in America. It kind of looks like this. I know it's going to be kind of like reverse because I got you in like selfie mode, but this is called Race, Riots, and Roller Coasters, and it talks a lot about the history of and just the struggle over desegregated recreation, and it talks a whole lot about roller skating and how it was. And those different aspects and those different elements. So this book really, really gets into that. It's a book that you can purchase on Amazon. And if you might be able to find it in the library if you look it up, but it's called Race, Riots, and Roller Coasters by Victoria Wilcott. And this is a really great read. And it really gives you a good understanding. And it talks about a lot of stuff that it is that I was talking about earlier, like about the Savoy and like City Park and different avenues and fights for integration into a lot of the different spaces as it relates to recreation for roller rinks. There's also the Chicago Rink Rats book. This is the foreword is actually by Breeze, my mentor. This actually gets into the history of Chicago and its early origin. For those that want to know and kind of really understand something about JB, you first have to understand Chicago's skate history to get there. If you understand the full comprehensive of what Chicago roller skating history was, then you can understand where it takes a minority shift and it starts to elevate to a whole nother level. And this book talks about rinks like the Arcadia, and it also talks about the Savoy Ballroom in Park City, and it talks about the Congress of Racial Equality with CORE. So this is a really good book too. It's called Chicago Rink Rats, and it's by Tom Russo. This is a good one. This book is actually called Doo-Wop, the Scene. The Chicago scene, which basically talks about doo-wop, just from a musical standpoint. Mm-hmm. In this book, it speaks to specifically about the Midnight Ramble, the aspect that it is that I was talking about the 12 to 5 and the midnight showings of Blacks in movie theaters and, what was happening during that time. This is a really, really great read too. Learn a lot about, kind of music, and it also gets into it, like as it relates to the Chicago scene as well. Like I said, you want to learn a lot about the Alpha and the origin. This is important. You also would want to check out, there's a book by Rockin' Richard. It's called The Motown Sound on Wheels. This is his personal book where he basically talks a lot about the Detroit skate history and what was happening in Detroit at the time. This is what I call like the library that I would give more so like for new students. that really kind of elevate and really get an understanding for what is it. But it's called the Motown Sound on Wheels, and it's by Rockin' Richard, who is a Detroit legend. So also something to read, and his book is available. You can Google it. I think it's on Amazon too, and you can grab this. Um, there's the last book that it is that I would get. There's a kid's book too that's called When Martin Luther King Wore Roller Skates. If you have children and you want to teach them about roller skating and, you want to read to them and at a very early age, you can get that book. That book is available on Amazon too. And it's called when Martin Luther King wore roller skates. And people don't know, Martin Luther King used to be a roller skater, and he used to love to roller skate, and he used to skate up and down, his streets and his neighborhood. And it kind of talks about that story and just his different fights, for racial equality and all those things. So that's a great book. The last book that it is that I would say that it is that you want to get. Now, it's going to be really hard to find physical copy, but it will be Bill Butler's Jammin' book. This book took me 3 years to find. And I finally located an actual good copy of it that was in great condition. There are only but so many of these that actually exist, and there is such a this book is probably one of the biggest cultural relics that it is that we have for Black roller skating, and it's so important in so many different ways because in this book is a glossary of terms that are associated with the jamming technique and style, which is a very big deal. This book will actually be a part of the creation of a lot of the criteria and things that we will use going forward towards the Olympics as we start to develop rule books and other different things and identifiable factors to really in. So this became a great source of information to understand when it happened. So this is a big one. In this book, he also talks about his travels in the military and how he learned from different skate styles from different places as he traveled in the military. And that's how it is that he was able to come up and develop the jamming technique, which is a combination of a lot of different things that it is that he learned while in the military, just stateside. And another thing that becomes significantly important about this book and why it's so important if you ever get a chance to own one of these books is this was one of the this is the only book that it is that exists where an actual roller skater who is African American was able to print an actual book and get it into circulation for selling. Back in the days with these books, they were not allowing self-published books. You had to actually be a part and, be credited, be credible, or be a part of a major publisher. And they weren't just doing self-published books like you can do right now, where you can self-publish your own book. So he had the hardest time trying to find someone in the US to do it. So in actuality, the person that it is that he actually ended up going to end up to print these books was from Germany. And he went to a German publisher and editor, and they were the ones who edited this book and printed this book. And that's how he was able to get it and be able to distribute it throughout the US. So, there are helps from counterparts that it is that come far and wide. And that's why there's only one other version of this book that exists in a foreign language, and it is in German. And that is why, because it was actually printed from a German publishing company and editor that it is that edited the book and really does these things. And another critical component of what's special about this book is all of the visual elements that it is that come. Like when you look at pictures like this and all of the different range of movements and things that it is that Bill was doing from the photography portion, which was outstanding. And one of the most incredible pieces and parts of what Bill Butler's book is, if you have it in sourcing, is the anatomy of an actual skate, which is where the skate itself is pictured. And then you go through each component and piece of what the roller skate is, and then it tells you everything that it is that it does and how it works and what it's used for. You won't see this anywhere anymore. And this was in the 70s. So a lot of what it is that he kind of gets into as he talks about like the plate and the wheels and all of these different things, for you to be able to really understand roller skating in a big way, you have to understand a lot about what it can do. Most people don't even know what their roller skates do or why they do it. Sometimes you're worried, you're wondering, why can't I do this move? Why can't I do that? and, you know, kind of go from there. And you can't do it if you don't understand like what your skate can do, you know. But in Bill Butler's book, he has a lot of great imagery that kind of talks about different positions and details as it relates to learning maneuvers and spaces and identifying and these things. And this is a great detail of what it is that it takes. This
Wow.
book is a very, 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 very important book in our cultural history. Um, and Bill Butler is important to our culture as well. But this is like what you call an alpha, like a blueprint for what it would take for you to do it for your style. For your style, something like this would give you and let you know the detailing that it would take to get into this. You have to really dig deep and really make it to where something is coming and has, and this is perhaps, you know what I mean, like a whole nother different kind of way. So finding this book is a whole nother feat all by itself. And I searched far and wide and wide and far and wide to get my hands on a physical copy of this book because this is about as important as it comes. And this book right here will literally lead to so many other different aspects for the styles if we decided to put them and write them down. Most of them are passed on generationally, but if we ever decide to archive them and put them in a book to where kids could study them and understand what this stuff is, it would be an amazing thing. But how we would do that is we would learn from Bill Butler's book. So this one is a very, very important book for people to get. So if you can get your hands on it, great. I know it's spread out in a bunch of different libraries throughout the country here in the U.S. So if you're in the U.S., you could, you know, hit your local library, search for it. It's called Jammin'. It's by Bill Butler and Ellen Schoen, who was German. Dr. J, who's from Berlin and he's from Germany, he actually owns the German version of the book, which is even more rare. He actually has that copy of which that it's in German, but it's a very hard book to find. And unfortunately, Bill did discuss and talk about reprintings and repressings of his book. So I'm hoping that it is that he does that because that would be an amazing thing for the skaters. So I hope that it is that he does and he really kind of puts it back out there. But if you don't, there are a couple of us within the community who have it. I have one. I know Joy has one. I know Sean from ATL Squad, he has one. So those of us who have it, we kind of all know each other. So between us, we have no problem with letting somebody kind of take a look at it. But you're going to have your gloves on. You're going to have to have some adult supervision.
Yeah.
The whole nine with the book because it's so hard to replace. The first one that I ever saw was actually in a library, and I spent damn near an entire day almost copying the pages out of the book and making copies of it so that I could have it as a reference for what it is that I needed to have before I could even find it, so that I could read and get an understanding for the information that's there. But it's very, very, very important in the overall history. So those would all be my books of recommendation as far as just kind of as far as documentaries. I would recommend the 8 Wheels and Some Soul Brother skate documentary by Tyrone Dixon. I have a link to it that's kind of like hosted on, I think I have it in my drive. I'll share it with you.
Okay.
And I got to look and make sure that it's still there, but I think I still do. And you can feel free to kind of like share it with other people that they can view it and see it. If you get on Amazon and they have it for sale, I would say to purchase it because it talks about the very beginnings of our skate community and how it, like the very first national skate party takes place in Chicago with Skater's Edge and Vanessa Poindexter, which is the alpha for how all the skate parties came to be. And then it talks a little bit about the early history of our skate community. So in the 8 Wheels. And then, you know, when you fast forward and then you start to get into going to see like the roll bounce, you know, as far as film, those are our skaters too. ATL has our skaters from our community. And of course, the United Skates documentary. Also Roller Dreams about the Venice Beach skaters is another one. That's great to see. All of those have elements and components of history that will give you some greater understanding for what it is that's kind of happening. So all of these are all sources. I hope to one day, in what I was talking about the new skater orientation, to be able to have all of these things be a part of that orientation to have the DVDs available, to have the links or the digital library or the sourcing of books to where people could read and really get an understanding for like what this is. Because we just have to get beyond the point of just kind of like, we're here, we skate, we go home. Like, don't like do a little bit more than just skate and go home. Like, go skate, learn, and then pass that information on to someone else so that they understand. If you bring other people into our community to experience it and know it, it's not about getting all deep in all of that, but just tell them about how it is that we get here. Give them a synopsized version of appreciation. It's like, look, this is what we do. This is how it came to be, and this is why it's important. If people do that, they will develop a greater appreciation for what it is, and maybe more people will fight for this and start to protect what it is. So I'm hoping that all of these things, elements, all things that it is that can share. And you guys can always keep in touch. Everybody in here, I'm pretty sure, that follows me. I'm like at the real JB Skater on Instagram. And then, with the music and everything else, you guys kind of know where like all of that stuff is. All of this stuff is all contribution to culture, contribution to different spaces. There's all kinds of things that it is that are coming. All kinds of projects, other community projects. Pretty sure you guys have seen the skate that it is that I've developed and things that it is I've done as far as that. So there's a lot. All of this stuff is just adding to. So thank you so much, what I'm saying, just for having me, more so like in the conversation. I appreciate it. And just the wanting this to know and understand your history, shout out to you and everything that it is that you're doing with your platform and empowering your platform and empowering the skaters to learn something through you and your conversations. You have a conversation with me and you wanted that conversation to be shared with other people because you felt like it was valuable. And that's how it starts. One conversation with us is just one person, and then we have people that tune in and learn even more about what it is that's happening here. And I think that that's a very special and important thing, so love you, bro. Much love to you. In London and all of my family, I'm saying that it is that's there that always shows me big love, me and my wife and, all of us. We have big love for London, and, we think what you guys are working on there is amazing. We're looking forward to like a lot of what's to come. Shout out to, y'all leadership and what's happening there with the NC and Kai and all of the new ventures and spaces. And, we're just here to support you guys and supporting, we appreciate you all supporting what we have. So we'll definitely be here to support you, so thanks to everybody for tuning in. I appreciate you for sure.
Thank you, man. Reggie, again, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Learned so much. And I hope everyone took something away from this. I know there's been people who came in from right in the beginning and watched all the way through, which is great. For anyone who's just jumping in now or jumped in during the conversation, I'm going to be posting it up either on Instagram or on YouTube. I'm going to figure out where to do it, where it's better. But yeah, go check out Reggie. Go look at all Reggie stuff. He's got so much things out there. If you don't know who Reggie is, now is your time. Now you know everything you need to know. So go check him out.
Love.
Yeah. Thank you, Reggie. I appreciate you. Shout out to everyone who came, and we'll see you all soon. Peace.